Welcome to Golden Star Memories. Behind many legendary Hollywood mothers are sons carrying their talent, strength, and unforgettable legacy into another generation. From timeless screen icons to modern stars, these remarkable stories reveal how fame and creativity continue long after the spotlight fades. Some followed their mothers into entertainment, while others chose quieter lives away from Hollywood glamour. Today, we celebrate these powerful family legacies, stepping past the velvet ropes to explore the hidden worlds existing just beyond the silver screen. Think of classic cinema as a beautiful illusion, a tapestry woven from heavy velvet curtains, flashing bulbs, and the intoxicating aura of absolute stardom. For decades, the world has been completely captivated by the women who defined elegance, power, and reinvention. We watched them under the brilliant studio spotlights, mapping our own dreams through their most unforgettable performances. There was the dangerous, sharp allure of Sharon Stone, the fierce independence of Susan Sarandon, and the timeless, unconventional charm of Diane Keaton. We marveled at the international majesty of Sophia Loren, the ethereal presence of Tilda Swinton, and the fragile, enduring grace of Audrey Hepburn. These women were not just actresses, they were architectures of glamour, building empires of fame that seemed entirely untouchable from the outside. Yet, away from the roaring crowds and the glittering awards ceremonies, a far more complex script was being written in the shadows. Behind the perfect, lacquered facades of these cinematic icons lay a deeply human reality, a quiet world of motherhood existing entirely out of frame. To be the son of a Hollywood legend is to inherit a kingdom you did not build, wrapped in a legacy that can either illuminate your path or completely consume your identity. Imagine growing up in rooms filled with the echoes of global applause, looking at your mother and seeing both a maternal figure and a cultural monument. The crown of Hollywood royalty is never light, and for many of these families, the burden of the spotlight carried a hidden, melancholic cost. Behind the dazzling smiles of icons like Farrah Fawcett or the boundary-pushing brilliance of superstars like Cher and Barbra Streisand lay untold chapters of personal struggle, intense public scrutiny, and the relentless pressure of a world that refuses to let a dynasty fade in peace. There are stories of sons who fought quietly against the heavy expectations of their names, and those who chose to disappear into a life of absolute privacy. As we begin this journey, we prepare to uncover what truly happens when the cameras stop rolling, the applause dies down, and the real drama of an inherited life begins. To fully understand the weight of these inherited lives, one must step back into the golden years of Hollywood, an era where the studio system operated like a collection of modern fiefdoms, and its stars were treated as absolute royalty. The path to legendary status was rarely paved with simple talent. It required a flawless public facade, a carefully manufactured identity that the public could adore without question. Elizabeth Taylor understood this machinery better than almost anyone. At the absolute height of her fame, during the chaotic and historically extravagant production of Cleopatra, she was not just an actress but a global obsession. Behind the scenes, amidst the shifting tides of international scandals and unparalleled luxury, her eldest son, Michael Wilding Jr., was growing up. For a young boy, navigating a childhood where your mother is universally recognized as the most glamorous woman on earth meant existing in a perpetual whirlwind of flashing bulbs and high-stakes drama. The first difficulties often arose when the public demand for the icon began to clash with the private needs of the family. Michael would later find solace away from the blinding glare of the cameras, channeling his own creative inheritance into the quiet disciplines of visual art and sculpture. Finding a sense of identity that the chaotic Hollywood landscape could never quite provide, further across the Atlantic, a different kind of cinematic dynasty was being forged in the prestigious theatres and film sets of Great Britain. Maggie Smith was building an acting legacy that would become one of the most revered in modern history, capturing the world with her sharp intelligence and unmatched theatrical brilliance in masterpieces like The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Yet, the reality of a life dedicated entirely to the stage and screen meant long separations, intense artistic pressure, and the constant scrutiny of a discerning public. Her son, Toby Stephens, grew up in the immediate shadow of this immense artistic brilliance, witnessing firsthand the sacrifices required to maintain a flawless reputation in a deeply demanding industry. Rather than fleeing from the daunting legacy, Toby chose to step directly into the fire, building his own distinguished career across theatre, television and film, proving that the family commitment to artistic excellence was not merely a title, but a profound calling. In a similar vein, the legendary Vanessa Redgrave was redefining what it meant to be a fearless, deeply intelligent performer, earning accolades for her work in Julia while balancing the heavy demands of an international career. Her son, Carlo Gabriel Nero, was born into this rich tapestry of creative expression, learning early on that behind the glamorous curtain laid a world of intense devotion to storytelling, a realization that would later guide his own respected path behind the camera as an international filmmaker. As the decade shifted, a new form of stardom emerged, one that blended traditional Hollywood glamour with the rising power of modern television and pop culture. Goldie Hawn became the radiant, effervescent comedy icon of a generation, bringing warmth and effortless screen charm to films like Private Benjamin. To the world, she was a symbol of unyielding joy, but behind that sunny disposition lay a fiercely determined professional who understood the volatility of the entertainment business. Her eldest son, Oliver Hudson, inherited that trademark playful personality, yet his childhood was inherently shaped by the unique pressures of Hollywood childhoods. Growing up in a household where fame was a constant, living presence meant learning how to protect one's own individuality while navigating an industry that constantly compared you to your legendary parents. Oliver would eventually carve out his own successful path in television and entertainment, using his natural humor to balance the heavy expectations of his family's enduring Hollywood legacy. For other families, the rise to fame happened under the watchful eye of an entire nation, as was the case for Lisa Kudrow during the golden years of television history. Her sharp comedic timing created one of the most enduring legacies on modern television, while her only son, Julian Murray Stern, watched the world embrace his mother from a careful distance. Growing up with a thoughtful perspective on the transient nature of public adoration, and eventually finding his own creative voice in visual culture and film, the concept of glamour underwent another dramatic transformation in the latter parts of the 20th century, creating a landscape where beauty and charisma were powerful currencies. Elizabeth Hurley took the world by storm, transforming raw screen presence into a lasting pop culture legacy that captivated international audiences. Her only son, Damian Hurley, grew up fully immersed in this vibrant, highly stylized world, observing the precise mechanics of public image and media attention from a very young age. Instead of shunning the intense spotlight, Damian stepped naturally into it, utilizing his striking confidence to expand his creative identity through fashion, acting, and directing, turning his family heritage into a modern artistic tool. However, the exact same environment drove others to seek refuge in absolute privacy. Melanie Griffith, an unforgettable leading lady who defined the spirit of an era in Working Girl, lived a life of immense public fascination, marked by high-profile relationships and the relentless pursuit of the paparazzi. Her eldest son, Alexander Bauer, witnessed the chaotic toll that major stardom could exact on a family. Choosing a completely different path, Alexander sought a quieter, grounded creative life away from the relentless machinery of fame, focusing his talents on independent projects and behind-the-scenes artistic work, proving that sometimes the greatest strength lies in choosing your own boundaries. The underlying tension of these lives often came from the sheer impossibility of separating the mother from the myth. Meg Ryan became America's ultimate romantic comedy queen, a cherished screen sweetheart whose films defined the collective imagination of millions. Her son, Jack Quaid, spent his formative years navigating the peculiar reality of seeing his mother's face on billboards across the globe, understanding the immense adoration and the parallel lack of privacy that defined her daily life. The challenge was to enter the exact same profession without being completely eclipsed by her shadow, a feat Jack accomplished with remarkable confidence, establishing himself as a versatile actor in his own right. This delicate balance between public duty and personal survival was even more profound for pioneers like Nichelle Nichols, whose historic role as Uhura in Star Trek broke fundamental barriers and inspired generations. Her only son, Kyle Johnson, saw firsthand the immense societal weight his mother carried, standing by her through both the historic triumphs and the grueling challenges of an industry resistant to change. His early film work and subsequent quiet life remained a dignified, direct connection to an extraordinary legacy of cultural courage, even when the presentation appeared perfectly serene on the outside. The behind-the-scenes realities of these iconic families were filled with hidden turning points and evolving dynamics. Sally Field captivated audiences with her emotional honesty and raw strength in classics like Steel Magnolias and Norma Rae, earning the deepest respect of her peers and the public alike. Her younger son, Eli Craig, and his brother, Sam Griesman, grew up witnessing the sheer discipline required to channel deep human emotion into legendary performances. They saw the vulnerability behind the accolades, the moments of doubt, and the intense work ethic that defined a true cinema legend. Eli would eventually channel this deep understanding of the human condition into his own work as a writer and director, while Sam used his creative voice to share a beautifully grounded, affectionate bond with the public, proving that despite the massive pressures of a Hollywood upbringing, the enduring power of family connection could survive the intense glare of the world stage. Each mother had to face the reality that their choices, their fame, and their sacrifices would inevitably shape the destiny of the sons who walked quietly beside them in the shadows of greatness. The true tragedy of absolute stardom lies in the fact that the very performances that make an actress immortal can sometimes destroy her personal life behind closed doors. Sharon Stone found herself at the center of a devastating vortex when her fearless portrayal in Basic Instinct cemented her status as an international screen icon. While the world celebrated her striking beauty and cinematic daring, a quiet, heartbreaking drama was unfolding in her private life. Following a catastrophic health crisis that left her fighting for survival, the glamorous illusion shattered entirely during a bitter, highly publicized custody battle over her eldest son, Rowan Joseph Bronstein. In a cruel twist of fate, the very industry and society that had objectified her on screen used her provocative cinematic image against her in the courtroom, stripping her of custody and leaving her to grieve in the quiet corners of a lonely mansion. The studio executives and the Hollywood elite, who had profited immensely from her fame, looked away in comfortable silence, leaving a mother to piece her life back together, while her son grew up, largely removed from the spotlight that had both created and fractured their family dynamic. This pattern of profound isolation and hidden distress repeated itself across the Atlantic, where Brigitte Bardot reigned as the ultimate French icon of absolute beauty and untamed sensuality. Yet, behind the intoxicating allure of an God-created woman lay an overwhelming sense of suffocation that eventually drove her to abandon the film industry entirely at the absolute peak of her fame. The transition from global obsession to private citizen was marred by a deeply painful, fractured relationship with her only son, Nicolas Jacques Charrier. The birth of Nicolas had been surrounded by an unprecedented media circus, a relentless invasion of privacy that made normal motherhood almost impossible. Years later, when Bardot released her deeply personal and unvarnished memoirs, the raw wounds of their estranged relationship were laid bare for the entire world to judge, resulting in a public and legal scandal that permanently severed the fragile bonds between mother and child. Society watched with a mixture of fascination and judgment, unable to comprehend how a woman adored by millions could struggle so deeply to connect with her own flesh and blood, illustrating the devastating emotional toll of an identity entirely consumed by the public gaze. For other legends, the drama was not one of estrangement, but of a shared, agonizing descent into a public nightmare that no amount of wealth or fame could prevent. Farrah Fawcett, the dazzling blonde icon whose radiant smile and role in Charlie's Angels defined the cultural landscape of the 1970s, spent her final years trapped in a devastating double tragedy. While she privately fought a brave and harrowing battle against terminal illness, her only son, Redmond O'Neill, was locked in a fierce, deeply destructive struggle with severe addiction and relentless legal troubles. The paparazzi, completely devoid of empathy, tracked every misstep, turning a family's profound heartbreak into a permanent tabloid spectacle. Behind closed doors, Farrah wept for the future of her son, knowing that the intense public attention and the crushing weight of her legendary name only exacerbated his personal demons. The Hollywood community, which had once worshipped her youth and beauty, watched from a distance as her final years became a poignant, deeply moving testament to a mother's unconditional love paired with the utter helplessness of being unable to save her child from his own internal darkness. Even the most perfect fairy tales of the century carried an underlying current of profound to awe, tragedy and hidden burdens. Grace Kelly achieved the ultimate Hollywood dream, winning an Academy Award for The Country Girl before leaving the entertainment industry at the absolute zenith of her fame to become the Princess of Monaco. To the public, it was a flawless transition from screen royalty to actual nobility, but behind the Grand Palace gates laid a lifetime of immense responsibility, rigid expectations, and the permanent sacrifice of her artistic identity. The ultimate turning point came with shocking, devastating suddenness in the autumn of 1982, when a tragic car accident took her life and sent shockwaves through the entire world. Her only son, Albert II, Prince of Monaco, was suddenly thrust into a dual reality of profound personal grief and immense royal duty. He inherited a legacy wrapped in the glittering glamour of his mother's Hollywood past and the solemn expectations of a sovereign nation, forcing him to grow up under the relentless gaze of global scrutiny while navigating the deep, private sorrow of losing the woman who had balanced the heavy crown with maternal warmth. The modern era brought its own unique brand of behind-the-scenes warfare, where the invasion of privacy became systemic and weaponized. Pamela Anderson transformed global glamour into an unprecedented pop culture empire, but that very fame became a dangerous double-edged sword when deeply personal, stolen media was leaked to the public, igniting a massive international scandal. Behind the sensationalized headlines, her eldest son, Brandon Thomas Lee, grew up during a time when his mother was fighting an exhausting battle to reclaim her dignity and protect her children from the predatory nature of early internet culture. Similarly, Mia Farrow, the hauntingly sensitive star of Rosemary's Baby, navigated a life defined by immense artistic achievement and deeply public, systemic family fractures that played out in the courtroom and on the evening news. For decades, the Hollywood hierarchy maintained a protective silence around the dark realities of its inner circles, shielding powerful figures while leaving families to bear the emotional scars. Her youngest son, Ronan Farrow, grew up witnessing this systemic silence firsthand, an experience that would ultimately drive him away from the camera and toward a powerful career in investigative journalism, where he would courageously dismantle the very walls of secrecy that society and the studio system had spent generations building to protect their most uncomfortable truths. As the stormy chapters of public scandals and sudden tragedies eventually gave way to the inevitable passage of time, the final acts of these legendary lives shifted into a period of deep reflection, quiet preservation, and the cementing of enduring legacies. The true measure of a Hollywood icon is often found not in the height of their box office success, but in the quiet dignity of their twilight years and the dedication of those left behind to guard their memory. Audrey Hepburn, who had captured the entire world with her fragile grace and unmatched elegance in Breakfast at Tiffany's, spent the final chapter of her life far from the glittering parties of Los Angeles, choosing instead the serene peace of Tolocana, Switzerland. In those quiet years, she channeled her remaining energy into a profound, tireless mission as a humanitarian leader, using the global recognition she had earned to bring light to the world's most vulnerable children. Following her untimely passing, her eldest son, Sean Hepburn Ferrer, and her younger son, Luca Dotti, accepted the monumental responsibility of managing her extraordinary heritage. Through intimate biographies, archival projects, and international exhibitions, they chose to reveal the deeply human reality behind the Hollywood myth, showing a woman who had survived the horrors of wartime Europe and used those scars to cultivate a lifetime of pure empathy, ensuring that her legacy remained a beacon of grace for future generations. A similar spirit of fierce devotion and preservation defined the later years of Lauren Bacall, the smoky-voiced queen of classic film noir who had redefined on-screen sophistication alongside Humphrey Bogart. Bacall navigated the changing tides of the film industry with a sharp, uncompromising wit, remaining a commanding presence in American culture until her final days. Her eldest son, Stephen Humphrey Bogart, and her younger son, Sam Robards, grew up fully aware that they were the living custodians of a golden age that was rapidly slipping into history. Together, they have worked meticulously to keep the memory of their legendary parents alive, balancing the heavy demands of managing historic estates with a deep personal commitment to honoring the authentic, unvarnished strength that made Bacall an immortal figure of the silver screen. In the realm of television, a parallel empire was built by Lucille Ball, the undisputed pioneer of American comedy, whose brilliant business mind and unmatched timing through I Love Lucy fundamentally revolutionized the entire entertainment industry. As the first woman to head a major television studio, her final years were spent surrounded by the profound respect of an industry she had helped build from the ground up. Her only son, Desi Arnaz Jr., who had experienced the intense dizzying heights of teen idol fame during his youth, eventually transitioned into a quieter, deeply reflective life focused on preserving the history of his family's monumental comedic empire, ensuring that his mother's groundbreaking contributions to art and industry would never be overshadowed by the passage of decades. The international stage also witnessed the graceful evolution of legacies that transcended continental boundaries, creating artistic dynasties that continue to shape modern cinema. Sophia Loren, the ultimate symbol of international cinematic majesty, maintained her status as a living monument of global culture, entering her later years with an undiminished aura of elegance and respect. Then retreating entirely from the creative world, she chose to collaborate on deeply personal film projects directed by her younger son, Edoardo Ponti, creating a beautiful artistic circle where the mother was guided by the vision of the son she had raised in the shadow of her own fame. Meanwhile, her eldest son, Carlo Ponti Jr., chose to honor the family's refined tradition through the discipline of classical conducting, proving that the inheritance of genius could manifest just in entirely different artistic languages. Across a similar cultural landscape, Isabella Rossellini carried the monumental weight of being the daughter of cinema royalty Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini, transforming her own golden years into an exploration of avant-garde visual storytelling, art and nature. Her adopted son, Roberto Rossellini, grew up fully immersed in this rich tapestry of international style and high culture, learning to navigate a family history that reads like a textbook of cinematic achievement while quietly developing his own creative voice. Standing as a living link to an era of pure artistic exploration, the final acts of Hollywood's most commanding trailblazers also revealed a deep, underlying commitment to individuality and social consciousness that left an indelible mark on history. Faye Dunaway, the fierce, Oscar-winning powerhouse of Network and Bonnie and Clyde, spent her later years carefully protecting her privacy, leaving behind a legacy defined by intense, uncompromising dedication to the craft of acting. A guarded heritage that her only son, Liam Dunaway O'Neill, continues to carry forward with quiet dignity. Jane Fonda, an icon whose career defied categorization through decades of artistic dominance, physical fitness empires, and fearless social activism, showed the world that a true legend never stops evolving. Her son, Troy Garrity, built a respected acting career of his own while balancing the multi-generational cultural impact of a mother who continuously challenged society to think, feel, and change, illustrating that the greatest legacy a parent can leave is the courage to stand firmly in one's own convictions. Barbra Streisand, whose monumental ambition and unparalleled vocal gift transformed the boundaries of what a female entertainer could achieve, entered her later years as an undisputed institution of American culture. Her only son, Jason Gould, chose to navigate this overwhelming artistic lineage by focusing on intimate, deeply soulful musical performances and songwriting, proving that behind the grand stadium-filling applause of a superstar mother lay a shared, quiet devotion to the pure, transformative power of melody and emotion. Ultimately, the marks left by these extraordinary women on history are far more profound than the stars bearing their names on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They were pioneers who navigated a deeply volatile, often predatory industry, fighting tooth and nail to protect their artistry, their sanity, and above all, their children. The sons who walked beside them, whether stepping confidently into the bright spotlights of their own creative careers like Jack Quaid and Oliver Hudson, or choosing the absolute sanctuary of private life, like Justin Qualley and Nicolas Jacques Charrier, remain the truest testaments to their mother's real-world strength. In the end, when the heavy studio curtains permanently close and the final credits roll across the screen, the true enduring magic of these Hollywood legends does not reside within the celluloid frames of their classic films, but in the living, breathing legacies of the sons who carry their talent, their resilience, and their unforgettable memories forward into the quiet dawn of a new generation. Breaking news, untold stories of Hollywood's legendary mothers and sons revealed Hollywood royalty, inside the private worlds, hidden heartbreaks, and enduring legacies of cinema's greatest dynasties, behind the spotlight.